Yo, 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 it's your boy H2O, your potential conditioner, and welcome to another episode of the New Balance Podcast. What up, podcast family? So good to be back with you. And as you can see, yep, I'm squatted up. My squad, they with me, they rolling. And trust me, they are packing today. Man, I don't know if you saw those first two episodes, but they were fire. And if you missed parts 1 and 2, I'm telling you, go back, do the replay, do the on demand, get your coffee, get your snacks, sit down, put the headphones on, and let's take this journey. New Balance Podcast. Show some love for Miss Naila Harrison and Miss Stacy Page. What up, sisters?
Hello.
How you doing?
Oh, it's so good. It's good. I'm on with Sister Sledge. Y'all remember that group, Sister Sledge? See, I might be dating myself. But you see them laughing. They know exactly who I'm talking about. No, my sisters are on today. And how was y'all's week? Um, what went on? Tell me some good stuff.
So my week went good. It was a busy week, but it was a good week. So, just still working with my clients and making sure they have everything they need and doing what God has put me here to do.
I love it.
It was a good week, and I had shared earlier that I was able to reach a person who I met in the store, who I noticed was a cutter. So
Mm.
I feel
Oh wow.
blessed to be able to have the discernment that God has given me and the ability to go to someone in that moment and tell
Yeah.
them they're beautiful and tell them I see them and that I'm here if you need someone. So my week has been wonderful.
Oh man, that's incredible. Man, we need a lot more of that. People, and just at the end of the day, man, just need to know, man, somebody riding for them. Somebody see them. I'm always reminded of a scene from a movie. The title of the movie is Beyond the Lights. If you haven't seen it, go out and watch it. It's a good movie, has a great storyline, and it's a moment where a young lady, man, she gets to the point where she's like, man, this stuff is a wrap. I'm finna end it all. She's getting ready to jump. Police officer comes in, and in order to save her life, he told her, he made a statement that I think that's so needed. He told her that he saw, I see you. I see you. When he said that to her, even though he didn't know her, she didn't know him. It was something about like, does anybody hear my cry? Like I'm crying, but nobody hears it. And so anyway, long story short, he pulls her up, saves her life, and eventually she ends up getting her life together. And then not only that, him helping her, she was in turn able to help him. It's a good movie. If you haven't seen it, go out and rent it, or it's probably streaming. It's called Beyond the Lights. It's a good movie. But people just need to be seen. That's why we have this podcast. That's why I believe God gave it to me, is because there are people who need what we have, right? And if you're watching today, perhaps you're one of the people who's been charged with going out and seeing those who need to be seen. I know what Naila is talking about firsthand. It's empowering when you can help somebody, right? It's not about the bottom line of all the other things that we make it to be. It's just simply just being there for somebody, man, and helping them get through moments. Life is about moments, whether we believe it or not. And just to have somebody there through tough moments, trust me, it's a game changer. Well, last week, man, we jumped in. We started a brand new, well, not last week, well, it was last week, but we started a brand new series titled My Mind Playing Tricks on Me, Factors Affecting Our Mental Health. And I'm telling you, it was game changer for me. Like both episodes, I learned so much and I'm continuing to learn. I love this particular topic. I feel like it's inexhaustible. And so I'm constantly learning things to better make my mental well-being better. And when you talk about mental health, depending on your experience to it, I know for me, we just deemed it as people who were quote unquote, they said were crazy, and everything mental health related was put under that umbrella of just they're crazy, they're out of their mind, and they need to be in a straitjacket, they need to be in the little soft room, and that is not That is so not what mental health is. That particular situation can be a fallout of mental health. We know that. But just everyday mental health, what people are dealing with, is not that. We know that. So I have on today, listen, look no further. I have on um, two of the brightest minds in today's arena as it relates to mental health. Trust me, I wouldn't have it no other way. And so today we're going to dive in and talk about some things, some much needed things. To kind of do a little recap, I believe in what God's word says. And I think if we want to really move forward in mental health, I believe there is a manuscript, right? A life manuscript. And if you really want to know anything about you, you should go back to that manuscript to find out what was in the mind of the maker. And God, He's our creator. So He created us and then He gave us a manual. So when there's breakdowns in life, you can go to the manual and find out what in the world is causing this breakdown. So last week we were looking in the word, and remember, ladies, we talked about the grass. They're gonna have to go back and listen to the episode so they'll know what we're talking about. But we talked about the grass and how the grass represented the community. Community has strong roots, right? We talked about how the herb, the herb yield, and how that herb yielding represents the productivity, and how we just need to be have some productivity in terms of just our mental health. And then the third one, we talked about the tree, and the tree whose seed is inside of itself. And when we look at that, that's a legacy, right? There is a such thing as having a good legacy of mental health. We see it in families where you can see that there has been a not so good legacy of mental health. Um, there is a such thing as something being familiar in family lines, right? And I think the way we talked about it last week, it really set us up for what we're going to talk about on today. Like I said, if you really want to know more in depth what we talked about, you got to go back and watch the episodes. It wouldn't be fair to give you those dimes on today. We're going to jump into today talking about family breakup or loss and just difficult behavior. I was a product of a family breakup, and man, it seemed like it took my life forever just to get on top of what had been on top of me for so many years. And little did I know that it related to mental health, right? My psyche. When your psyche takes that type of blow, when it takes that type of beating, you need to get some what I would call some outside help to get it back in balance. And so many times we see people, they're walking through life and they're out of balance a lot of times just from the trauma that they've experienced. So I want to jump in there, ladies, and I kind of want you to, by definition, by experience, let's talk a little bit about mental health as it relates to family breakup and or loss, and then just how just having difficult behavior. How does it come about?
So, just in my experiences, what I've seen when it comes to family breakup and those types of relationship losses, a lot of it is just based on mental health, more so when we talk about like the, thinking patterns, how we're thinking, and then the behavior. So when we talk about mental health, some people don't actually know exactly what it is, or like, well, I know it has something to do with our brain or our mind,
Right.
but they don't really know. So let me define it real quick, make it a little bit plainer and clear. So mental health is actually like our psychological well-being. So that encompasses our thinking, so what we think, and also our emotions, and then of course how we act. And I did reference that in the last podcast. I talked about it. So basically, like I was saying in that podcast, what it boils down to is really thinking, how we're making our choices, how we're making our decisions, how we feel about that. And then of course our actions are going to follow. So in my experiences, when it comes to like the family breakup, what I've seen is just there's been a lot of issues that have been passed down from generation to generation to generation. And so when I work with families and family therapy, I always like to go back and, get the history on the family to see, why is this family having these issues? why are we seeing maybe either the women aren't getting married, like in some of these families, or if they are getting married, then why is there, divorce in every generation? Just so they can actually see, those patterns. And then it gives me some insight as to, what's going on in the family. But typically what I've seen when it comes to like family breakup and loss is that there were issues that were never addressed in families. Like last week, we talked about, keeping secrets. Okay. Secrets will damage a relationship, secrets will end things. So, of course, we don't want people to keep secrets. But you see a lot of, families keeping the secrets, not talking about the issues. So it's like you got the elephant in the room, but nobody wants to address the elephant. And then after a while, you're going to get the fallout. And then that's why you see, excuse me, some of the families breaking up. And typically it is because we just have the issues that we don't sit down and we don't talk about. I know it can be difficult sometimes because I've been there myself, where like there's family issues, but nobody wants to say anything. But then I'm like, okay, if nobody says anything, how do we get better? How do we move past this? And we don't just, keep messing up all, of our relationships, because we need our family. They're our support system. They're the people that we are usually closest to that's going to be there for us if anything happens. So for me, it has just been families not taking the time to actually sit down and address the issues that need to be addressed. And I think when that happens, we'll see more healthier families.
But I love that. Great answer. Naila?
I think we touched on, it's so many different components to this. We touched on this a little bit last week too. A lot of families, a lot of times people stay in a relationship and they say they're doing it for the children, and that may not necessarily be what's best for the children. And when you end a relationship, you also have to grieve that relationship because it's like a loss, it's like a death. So when we're talking about family breakups and loss, it brings me to thinking about grief, right? So there are 7 stages of grief, right? So initially you're shocked, right? You're paralyzed from hearing the bad news. And then you have the denial stage where you're trying to avoid the inevitable. You don't want to believe that it's really true. Then you get angry, right? You're frustrated. You have all these pent up emotions that are coming out, and you're trying to process through those emotions. But in some instances, we don't know how. And so we use maladaptive ways of coping, which are negative ways of coping, like drinking and smoking and things like that. Then you start bargaining, right? So you're looking in vain for a way out and like, well, why did this happen to me? And why not? Why can't you take this person instead of, why can't you take me instead of this person? That's what the grief portion. Depression sets in when you come to the final realization of the inevitable that, yeah, my parents are separating, or yes, I did lose this person. Then you're trying to test things out, like trying to come up with realistic solutions to the situation. Like, okay, so maybe I can handle it this way, maybe I can handle it that way, until you finally get to the acceptance phase and you're finding out a way to move forward. So when families break up, you still have to grieve those relationships, because when you don't, like Dr. Page said, when you don't talk about it, you're continuously in turmoil and you're perceiving things from a lens of grief that you haven't processed through. Broken, I would say I prefer to have I met a colleague, she told me, she said, yeah, I didn't have my dad in my life ever. And I turned out just fine. He actually says I'm the child that he's the most proud of. I went to school, got a degree. I have my master's degree. While my sister, she's never gone to school. She had him in her life and she's not successful. But the emotion and behavior patterns of those two people are very different, right? So she perceives herself as being successful without him because she has all these accolades. However, she doesn't engage with people well. She can't maintain consistent relationships. While her sister may not have the degrees, right? But she's able to build healthy relationships and keep healthy relationships. So families breaking up negatively impact the families overall in several different ways. Sometimes it's better for it to break up and sometimes it's not. And that's what counseling is for.
No, that's good. That's ooh, y'all. Okay, y'all waxing deep early. Okay, we can ride with that. When you both were talking, the thing that came up and just is inappropriate behavior, whether it's something that's done on purpose or whether it's something done without knowledge. So you guys gave some examples of what inappropriate behavior looks like, and I think for me, mine wasn't necessarily doing any of those things. Mine was so internalized because I really didn't have anyone to talk to, right? Because my mom was like, look, um, that was then, this is now, right? And I have to figure out right now. And the pressure and the weight of right now, it doesn't yield any time to even deal with that breakup or that loss, right? So, and I'm talking children parent relationship or parent child relationship. So the way we were wired is what I appreciate about her, she modeled what we needed to do. So she was modeling, first of all, toughness, because it was a start over. She had to come back home and start over, right? So for us, we were taught to do what model, well, to do what she was doing. So her thing was, my life now, I got to pick up and move with the pieces. So for us, there wasn't no discussion like, is your dad coming back? Is he gonna have a relationship with you? Does he love you? Does he care about you? Now I know if she would have had time to like think of that, she would like, you know what? No, I need to sit them down and then kind of explain it to them, right? But unfortunately, there was like it was no time for that. Like we were trying to figure out where we're gonna live, how we were gonna live, what she's gonna drive, where we're gonna stay. Obviously, you do have family to help you, but my mom was like, "No, this is my life. I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z." And so, what happens is you look up 8 years, no, 6, 7 years pass by, and then there's a void. Now, I'm gonna fast forward. I'm saying a lot, but I want you ladies to unpack it. So now that happens. Now I grow up with a bunch of anger and hostility for that breakup because there hadn't really been a lot of answers to it. So now you fast forward even forward. Now I have a family of my own. I start this family of my own. And even though my wife can't see it, the day she married me, I'm standing at the altar with all of this emotional and trauma and all this other stuff. And I'm telling her, I promise for better or worse, sickness and health to death do us part. And we're giving these vows, and I have all of this emotional junk that I have never opened up. And so now I start a family of my own. And the reason I'm going this route is because some of you are watching and you are me, maybe different set of circumstances, but now you find yourself having your family, whether you're from a parental or if you're a child, now you're the child that has grown up, right? And you still have all these things that have not been addressed. So when you talk about a breakup or a loss and you talk about just uh, behavioral issues, like what's the best place for us to kind of open the bag and start to delve with all of these painful and hurtful things, guys?
So, in my opinion, the best place for us to start is in childhood, um, because we do, of course, go through all of our developmental stages from, childhood, adolescence to adulthood.
Mhm.
So I've worked with everybody in those age ranges. So
Right.
for me, I say if it, happens in childhood, definitely start there because if not, what happens is you're going to take it into adolescence and then adolescence is going to go into adulthood. And typically once we get to adulthood, our patterns are set. Our thinking is
Mm,
set. So if you've got a certain type, a belief, okay, and you've had that belief since childhood, it's not changing when you get to adolescence. Typically, it's not going to change when you get to adulthood. Our brains are most flexible and easier to change, and thinking is easier to change, and behavior is easier to change when we're small in childhood. And what I've seen in my experience is like there are families that broke up, when these children were young, 3, 4, 5 years old. Some younger than that. But what happened is the parents never told the child why the breakup happened. So then, of course, if you don't ever get an explanation or an answer for something, you start making up stuff in your mind. Well, this is why it happened. Maybe it was something, I did, or whatever. So I would say the younger, the better, definitely start in childhood. There's a lot of people that think, well, children aren't ready for it. And I'm like, some children are. And I'm like, you don't know until you actually sit down, you explain it, you talk about it. And like you talked about, standing there on, your wedding day, you've got all this baggage. Well, that baggage needed to be unpacked, at that time. Now, of course, you do have, situations where no, it, just wasn't done. And I know, of course, back, years ago, it was like if something happened, you had some type of adversity, whatever, it was like pick up the pieces and you keep going. And of course, as African Americans, we are generally taught to be strong. I will say we are probably one of the most resilient races because of everything we've gone through. So we're just taught, you deal with it and you move on. But we're not taught to, well, let's sit down and process this. And let's talk about those thoughts, you're having. Let's talk about, the negative feelings, you're having. Because if not, it just, festers and it grows. And then we start internalizing stuff, and some people internalize it. So then that's where we see people getting depressed. Okay. And then that can, lead to, self-harm, suicide, everything in between. And then you see some people, they act it out. So that's where we see people, they're out there drinking, they're, using drugs, having sex, being promiscuous, you name it, they're doing it. I mean, some people like they're overeating, whatever it is. I mean, you're going to find an outlet, to get it out. So I say start, in childhood. It is definitely fine for children to go to therapy. I tell people all the time, if you need to take your child to therapy, please do so, because that just helps, the child. And then that way they don't grow up, into adults and have to deal with all of that stuff then, because at some point in time, it's coming out. Okay. So I tell parents, if you notice the acting out behavior, in your child, whatever, sit down, and talk to them. I mean, I talk to people all the time and they're like, we're having a hard time. Go to family therapy. Okay. There's definitely nothing wrong with that. They will treat everybody. They will treat you individually, the children and the parents, and they will treat you as a family.
Wow, wonderful. Before you respond, Naila, that's exactly what I wanted to get to or to hear, because I understand from a parental, and obviously, man, when if I could ever had the conversation with my mom, man, trust me, I don't blame her. And in my situation, I knew why the breakup happened, right? Like the family breakup had to happen. It was a life or death situation, and I'll leave it there. But her being able to like articulate that to us, and I at the time, of course, my brother and sister, they're like 3 or 4 years younger, right? So maybe the question of like, why are we here? Why is he there? We're not together. I understand that, but for me, I was older. I had more of an understanding, and when I look at it now, I do believe if I could have been able to unpack some of that then, a lot of the things I dealt with or found myself in places with, I wouldn't have never experienced it. So if you're a parent today, you heard from the doctor, like your children, they can handle it. They can handle it, right? Now, obviously, if it's a case you take them, they can't handle it, you guys are going to have to figure out a different process. But if you have the children, I'm telling you, it's so important. Carve out the time. Maybe this summer y'all can't go to Disney. We got some other pressing issues that we got to get taken care of. And because you want them to be well-rounded individuals, right? Balance, get them the help. And when you're shown, when you see the indicators, do not ignore them. Get the help. Get the help. Get the help. I just want to inject that. I think that was so good, Dr. Stacy. Go ahead, Naila. Come on, bless us, sister. Come on.
Dr. Page said most everything I was going to say. I was most passionate about the portion where she talked about in the African American community, how we're taught to basically, we got to just brush ourselves off and keep it moving, especially Black women. When you're a Black woman, and how many children did your mom have?
Three
Three children.
of us.
You're a Black woman. Now you're single. You have 3 children. You have to figure out how to recreate the world for your children so y'all can survive. So at that moment, she had to dissociate. She couldn't focus on what had happened. She had to focus on what she had to do. So in doing that, her focusing on trying to talk to y'all about that would have probably hurt her more than anything. But when you know better, you do better, right? So now we know that it's important to have those conversations, sit your children down, because in that moment, you didn't feel seen and you didn't feel heard, right? So you basically took all that energy and did other things with it. But you went through the world with that mindset that I'm not seen, I'm not heard, I don't know what's going on, what happened with my dad. Like, and it changed the way you perceive the world because that was a trauma that you experienced. Remember last week we talked about how trauma changes the way you see the world. It changes the way you see yourself in the world and others. So your world had been shattered and you didn't know what to grieve with your father because he was taken away from you and you didn't know why. So you probably blamed yourself a little bit, right? You were probably resenting your mom at some point. Didn't know that that's what it was. You didn't know what those feelings were called or those emotions, but there was some resentment there. You probably blamed her for some things, but you didn't know that because you're a child. But you were angry because your dad wasn't there and he was supposed to be. And then you probably resented other children who had their dad because you didn't have yours. So that anger just builds. It builds and then it translates and you can see it in other things that you do and other decisions that you make or the lack of decisions that you make because you're not able to completely see the world the way you should see it.
Mm. Ooh, I'm not gonna touch it. I'm not gonna touch it. I want to touch it. Look, I'm gonna
Touch
touch it. I'm gonna tell you how I'm gonna touch it.
it.
Look, I'm giving you guys a sneak peek. End of 2022, we have our third release for our book. It's called You Have the Right to Remain Solid. And I go in and I dissect my story a little about what we're talking about and the why. And I'll tell you, it's been a great journey for me to like I'm totally healed from that, right? No, yeah, there's a scar there, but man, the pain of it, it's all good. And I always want to preference when I talk about these things that really, really, for me, very, very emotional. And then also too, I want to be mindful of my loved ones who will see this, my brother, my sister, other family members. It's no disrespect to anybody. We just have to get to the point where some of the things we need to tell the truth so we can get the help that we need. And so no knock on my mom at all. And, for what happened, even with my pop passed away, man, we were good. So I'm thankful for the platform where we can have the conversation for people who cannot have it. Now, what I want to do, ladies, I want to throw a wrench in it because you said something, Naila, when you were talking about how my mom, how she had to function, right? She was like, I can't focus on that. And I think we have to talk about this because there's a good side to it, but then there's a dark side to it that has hindered us. And you ladies know where I'm going when I say this. The one thing I do appreciate about my mom was the thing that gave us the balance, even though there were a lot of things that we had to deal with. She had us in the house of the Lord.
All right.
Her mindset was this: I can't control what happened. I can't even fix it. God, I'm gonna take my whole life. I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna take these 3 kids I have. I'm gonna give it to you. I'm gonna do everything I can do in the natural. And all of the things I can't do, God, I'm depending on you to help my kids with, help me with. And that's what she did. And I'm telling you, I want the world to know I am so grateful that she did that because trust me, it was a journey for me to get here. But I promise you, she put the foundation in place for me to be able to start the journey, right? And so I think about all the time, if she hadn't have made that choice and that sacrifice during that season, I don't know where my life would have ended up. So when we talk about our faith and as it relates to mental health, there is an argument that goes on that says this, and I want you ladies to jump in, where, well, if you're having mental health issues, All you need to do is pray about it, give it to God, and God's going to fix it. That's that argument, right? But then the other side of it is, listen, God says, forgetting those things that are behind so we can press towards the things that are ahead, right? You need to forget that stuff, and give it to God. When you give it to God, you can move on. So ladies, dive in, and I want you to talk to us, help us, because I want to have a balanced message, because there is a spiritual healing that needs to take place. We all know that, right? But as it relates to mental health and the help, because the Bible talks explicitly about us, our mindset, what frame of mind we have, right? So go ahead, ladies, dive in. I know you want to chump. I know you want to talk about this issue right here, or this subject.
Yes, that is a very popular subject, a very popular topic. And we've heard it all the time. We're just going to pray and take it to the Lord.
Mhm.
And of course, that's what we have been told and taught to do. So typically that's what we do. You mentioned, have, faith in mental health, but in the Bible, there's also the scripture that says faith without works is dead. Okay. So even though, yes, we do need to pray, and take it to the Lord and seek him first, because ultimately he is, the healer. He's the one that's going to heal, whether, he does it with or without, medication or therapy. Okay. Because he can. Or if he says, no, I need you to get the therapy and the medication. Okay. He wants to do it that way. So definitely, seek him first. But then also you got to put your faith into action. So you got to exercise it. If you don't, how do you get well? You don't. How do you get better? You don't. It's just like working out. You got to work those muscles, you want to make them stronger, things like that. So when it comes to that, I do tell people, yes, definitely pray, and seek the Lord, because ultimately he's going to do the healing, but you also have to take some steps. Okay. So you got to walk that out. So if you need to go and you need to get, the counseling, if you need to get the therapy, by all means do that. Pray and ask God to lead you to the right person. That is why he created therapists. That's why he created counselors. That's why we have those professions out there, because he knew, well, yes, I've got, physicians, and orthopedics and, dentists and everybody else for the body, but I need somebody to help people with their minds, because he wants us to be whole, mind, body, and soul, mind, body, spirit. Okay. So I do tell people definitely, pray and go to God, but then also get the help that you need. Just like, if you're physically sick, you have something going on, you're just not going to lay around and get worse. Typically, you're going to go to the doctor because, okay, I need somebody that's got that expertise. I need somebody that can evaluate me, assess me, and let me know what's going on. And if I need medicine, get it treated, or if I need surgery to get it treated, I'm going to make my decision and I'm going to get it treated. So it is the same thing, with our minds. Is just, we want people to go to therapy. I tell people all the time, you can have Jesus and a therapist, because guess what? The Lord can work through that therapist. He can work through that counselor to get you healed. And of course, we do hear forgive and forget. I tell people, guess what? You're not going to forget everything. There are some things, especially when it comes, to trauma, that is etched in your brain forever. It's going to get triggered at some point. You may think about it, but if you are healed, you won't feel those same negative emotions, that you felt prior to your healing. So I do tell people, you're not necessarily going to forget everything, but you will get to that point to where when you think about it, it's not painful anymore. You're not feeling the negative emotions or anything like that, because you have healed from it. So you don't necessarily, forget it. You can forgive somebody, but you might not forget what they did to you, but you're able to move on with your life, and you're not letting whomever, that person is and what they said or did, it just doesn't control you anymore.
That was like a mic drop. Boop.
Oh. Drop the mic.
So.
Yes.
I love it. Go ahead. I'm zipping it.
So when I think about that, I think about, okay, so the scripture you shared, we shared that in a previous podcast also. I think about being abandoned, feeling abandoned by God, and being angry with him, because as Christians, we feel abandoned by him and we get angry. But God also says to lean not to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge me, and I shall make your path straight. I will direct your paths. He also says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So we're supposed to draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to us.
Whoa. We can't. Okay, I want you to say that scripture again, and I want you to say it very slowly.
Okay.
And
Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you.
the other part before that about the how many
A
minds?
double-minded man,
How many
double-minded,
minds?
double-minded.
Right there, that's a picture of mental health.
Mhm.
You, all of us here, you know, for you to have your best day, you can't have no two minds. You got to have a double mind. Now, you ever heard this? I love this. You ever heard I call them the older generation. I'm like, I have two minds about it. You ever heard that? They say, I had
Yeah.
two minds about it, right? And I get what they mean when they say that, right? They may be like, well, it's like kind of like a pros and like a cons thing. Like I think this way about it because this is when I come. And then, but I think this too, because this could be. What I mean by that is one mind is the mind that your family needs, your community needs, the mind that you need. But then there's another mind that you have that's full of all the trauma, all the disappointments, all of the hurt, all of those things that you see about yourself that are not good. So when I say double mind, that's the double mind that I'm talking about. And life has triggers. Then all of us, life has triggers that trigger that double mind. And depending on what it is, right? We saw it last week. We really hadn't talked about it, but we saw it. Last week was a week full of suicides, prominent people that the world may know, but then think about all the people who never hit the timeline of the news. We never saw the story, but yet they took the lives because of those two minds, right? So go ahead, Naila. I just wanted to bring that out and give clarity to that in terms of what does that look like?
Well, and just even with the double-mindedness, it's like that's a sickness of the heart or inner man, and it can't be corrected necessarily with medicine based on the Bible, right? But it's a disease of the heart, and it should be recognized and addressed. Because when you think about a double-minded man, that's two-faced, right? That's double tongue. So you speak with the forked tongue. So it's deceitful, treacherous, right?
But it
So
talks but it talks also about, he says he's unstable.
unstable,
In mental health, you're what? You are
unstable,
unstable. You're
exactly.
unstable. You're unstable. And so I don't want to vilify, make it like a villain. So, oh my God, I got two minds. No.
Right,
Those are indicators.
right.
It's an indicator. Like, okay, I know this one mind, it's not good for me and everybody that's connected to me. So what we do is like we carry it. It talks about the sin and the weight. That double mind is like people say, well, it's not a sin, but it's a weight that we carry around, and that weight has access to things it shouldn't, right? It does. And so we have to stop allowing it to have access.
And
Go ahead.
Dr. Page said that God created counselors and therapists for a reason.
Yes.
He created us for a reason. So I can honestly say when I was in my deepest, darkest depression, when my sister passed, I had to pray. And I went to see a psychiatrist, I had a counselor, but I had to pray. When I had insomnia, I had to pray. And that would help me go back to sleep. But I had to do that in conjunction with the things that my counselor encouraged me to do, and in conjunction with the medications that I had to take at that time. I'm no longer taking the medications, but I do still have my counselor because you still have triggers that bring you back to that moment and different things that happen that bring you back to that moment, but you still have to go back and address them. So it's okay to combine church and God with counseling, but you got to be consistent in what you're doing. Don't just say, okay, God is gonna work it out. Yeah, God, you can pray to God, but you still have, like, faith without works is dead. You still got to do both. You have to, or you're still being disobedient to the scripture, and you're doing yourself a disservice and the others in your family as well. And we were speaking on earlier, we were talking about we're lost, and we're still talking about that, and going to God. But when you talk about abandonment, it makes me think about children whose families are broken up and they go into foster care. right? Or they go into the CPS system, or the families end up in shelters, right? Sometimes all they have is a counselor, but if you have a faith-based counselor, it helps. I'm in a shelter, right? I assist people in that capacity. And a lot of them talk about turning to God and how God gives them strength every day. And in conjunction with their prayer and them going to church, them doing counseling and support groups, they're able to continue on and to persevere. So there's a lot in families breaking up in loss. There's so many different components. I think that we could talk about that for a whole month, right, Dr. Page? So
Hmm.
that
Probably
is,
3.
yes, probably 3 months.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot.
Well, ladies, man, this is so good to me. Um, we're given, okay, this is great information that we're getting. And I want to walk through the process pretty much of the time that we have left. Okay. So I'm hearing you guys have this conversation. Okay. I know I need to do something. I'm not quite sure what I need to do, even though I heard what you said. You've given me the clinical side of things. You guys are talking about God's word. You're talking about even your own personal experiences. But yet I still find myself, I'm not knowing where to go next. Okay, ladies, how do we help them um, move here? Because we're talking about all of it's hurtful, but this is painful. Like this is a painful thing, and it's not something that just happened. In most of these cases, um, it's been going on for a minute. So, what do you say to them, whether it be professionally or personally? Like, okay, this is what I want you to do, or this is what I need you to do. Right? Forget this podcast. Like, I need you to do what?
So where they can actually start is, one is by reaching out to a mental health service provider. There's a lot of providers in the community. So whether it's community mental health center, so for example, here in Dallas, we have Dallas Metro Care. So they actually work with children, adolescents, and adults. So just reaching out to a local mental health authority. And a lot of people, they're like, well, I don't know, where to start. Is there a number, whatever. So they can call 211. And so what it is actually a line where they can just say whatever type of service it is they need or whatever type of help it is they need. And then they will connect them, with an organization or a service provider who can give those services. I believe it is statewide. So I don't think it's just in this area. So that way, if they need maybe mental health services or if they need any other type of services, then they can just link them up with somebody that can provide the services. Another thing I would suggest is if they are in a church and they have a counseling center. I know a lot of churches, they have, their own on-site, in-house counseling departments. Definitely, start there. They may want to reach out to their church. And then maybe if their church doesn't have anybody, then, if they have maybe a referral source, they can refer them out there. Also, just reach out, to family and friends and see if maybe they might know somebody too. So those are just a few suggestions on where to start.
And there's also the employee assistance program. Most employers have that resource, and they give you 5 to 6 free counseling sessions. There's also, I know locally, we have innovative alternatives. If you do the application and you qualify, I believe you get your first 5 to 8 sessions for free. And if you're a survivor of domestic violence or sexual assault locally, we have Bay Area Turning Point and the Bridge Over Troubled Waters, and you get free counseling services there.
Good, good. I want to throw this one in too, because I know parents find themselves dealing with it. How do you engage with your child's school, whether it be a young child or whether it be high school, middle school, when the school is brought to the school's attention, or they recognize that there is a need there for some type of counseling or some mental health help, how do you engage with your school? Because I know sometimes that's a lot for parents because of how they work. And then the other part of it, it can be embarrassing too, right? It's a lot of factors that go with it when it comes to your child. But when the school gets involved, like talk to parents about what is that, how to move with that, how they should handle that, and what's just wisdom in situations as it relates to their children in the school district.
So for the school districts, and I do have some experience. I worked at a DISD for a year in their alternative school program. And of course, typically when it comes to children, that's usually where a lot of the issues surface. Maybe they're not doing well in school as far as, getting their work done, grades, there's acting out behavior, things like that. So typically, that's where it surfaces. I know there are a lot of schools, they do have their own mental health clinicians there. So they can start with the school counselor. And then, of course, the school counselor, can always help. Typically, they are going to have a referral base, and they can, refer the child out if they need to, if it's something they can't address maybe at school. I know there are some school districts that they have their own mental health clinicians. So they are actually on site at the schools, or some of them, they have certain schools that they actually go to give those services. I know here in Dallas, DISD, which is our largest school district in this area, they have their own mental health department. So when a child actually does, have some issues that need to be addressed, what they'll actually do is refer them to one of the on-site mental health clinicians. And then they also have the outpatient clinics, which are the family clinics. They are attached to the schools, but the families can still come there, if they need to come, after school hours. So like when the parents get off work, they can come in, they can do their therapy sessions. So I would say at the school, start with the school counselor, or if there's a mental health, clinician that is on site there, and then they can actually either, do the treatment themselves, or they can refer out.
And it's the same here. And if you're at an at-risk school, they also have at-risk counselors. And then they can also refer you to other clinicians as well in the area.
That's good. That's great. Listeners, if you're listening, hopefully this is good for you to help you with some starting points, or even if you need to start have the discussion, some great discussion points. And we hope that in terms of your mental fortitude, just your mental health, not just for you, but for your family, you're doing everything that you can to make it be its best. If it's not, we want you to know we're here. I have access to these two young ladies, and we will do whatever we can to help you and your family. It's important. First of all, let me say this: it's important to God that all of you be in well-being, your mind, your body, your soul, your spirit, all of it, right? He's concerned about you. But like they said earlier, he's given us counselings. He's given us medications, all of these different things to help us. But we all understand that he is ultimately the healer, right? But we are workers together, to get it. When I think about it, it's not necessarily related to mental health, but their mental health was challenged. When you read about the lepers and it talks about as they went, they were healed. You have to understand back then, when you were a leper, you were an outcast. They were cast out of society. In other words, their normal function, or how they function every day, how they could be around people, be in society, they ostracize them, they put them out. And so you can just imagine from a mental standpoint where they were mentally. Life as they knew it had changed because of what they had. But here's an opportunity for them to get their lives back. So it took something mentally for them to overcome. It's like, we don't have anything to lose anyway. We're already at the bottom. So mentally, they had to engage at that promise, right? So it took them to have to do something. What did they do? They went. They went in a they went in the direction of where the help was. And then they had to have a made up mind that where the direction I'm going in, everything that I need, I'm gonna get it there, right? Or I'm gonna get it on my way. And of course, we know as they went, they were healed. Mental health is the same way. As you begin to partake of your mental health betterment, when you make the phone call, when you schedule the appointment, when you physically go, when you make up in your mind, you know what? This ugly secret is not ugly anymore. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to have the tough talk with my husband, or I'm going to have the talk with my kids, or I'm going to have the talk with my best friend, or whomever it is. It's you wenting. Trust me, it's you wenting. And then I want to encourage you to pray too. We talk, all of us, you heard us. We have to do not leave the God factor out of it. It needs to be at the top. But there are some other things that we need to do just naturally, right? There are some natural things we need to do. And I promise you, I can't promise you what your end result is going to be in terms of it overall, but I can promise you this, you'll be so much better than where you were or where you just allowed yourself to be for so long. And so make up in your mind that in 2022, like I'm going to just have a better mental well-being. My kids, we're going to have a better mental well-being. Our environment mentally, what is going to be fire. Like my thoughts, the stuff, the echoes of the past, the ghost of the past, man, it doesn't have any place in my now. Like my now is so important. I'm tired of the heartache. I'm sick of the pain. I want to move forward. I want to encourage you, take these podcasts, take the information that we're given and put it to work and see what happens. Man, ladies, this was incredible. Thank you so much for your labor of love. I know, like I said, personally, they've been through battles, wars. Personally, I know they've walked with others, right? And unfortunately, the season that we're in, this is not going away. It's something that we have to deal with. But if we can attack it as a community, as a village, I promise you, the more of us better, the better our families and communities can be. New Balance Podcast. Man, y'all better show Naila Harrison and Dr. Stacy Page some love, man. These ladies they throwing down triple doubles. I'm talking about they shooting trades like Steph from half court. Man, our lives are going to be so much better because of the wisdom, the knowledge, the perspective that you ladies are sharing. I appreciate you guys so much. We out of time for this episode, but trust me, there's more to come with this. There are a few more episodes left of, my mind playing tricks on me. Those factors, man, that are affecting our mental health. Trust me, we're going to get it together. Ladies, we appreciate you so much. Do you guys have any closing words before we get out?
No.
No worries. See, man, come on back for the next. Y'all come on back for the next episode. We have some other great information for you that we want to share. Well, we got to get out of here. It's your boy H2O, your potential conditioner. And as we always say here, it's strength for today, sustenance for tomorrow. And listen, we love you and we're standing with you for your mental health. Peace.